チャンネル。こちらは日本テレビです。
This is a Honda. And this is a Honda. So is this. And also this. They even make a robot. Isn't it cute? Honda is your go-to brand for economical, reliable, and affordable little machines to make your life better without really getting in your way. And while that is true, this is also a Honda. And so is this. So is this. And most importantly, these are Hondas. Because you see, while Honda is subtle in the streets, they are demons in the sheets. And the reason? Well, the name on the side of the building. Honda isn't just a word, it's a man. A man who didn't start his company to make minivans that pick up soccer teams, but to make fast machines that collect golden trophies. And collect them they have. Thanks to that die-hard racing spirit, Honda, for decades, had a beating heart in motorsports. But just as their fire started to burn its brightest, it was nearly snuffed out in a moment. As the 90s came to a head, the Japanese economy took a sudden turn for the worse. The outlook for Honda had become bleak. Their NSX's shining red paint had faded, and the futuristic Prelude was being outclassed by European war machines. But then, as the world waited for their computers to explode from Y2K, Honda's engineers would emerge from the shadows, and the heart of Honda would beat once more. In their hands, they held a vision, a machine that was decades in the making. It was the hard-edged dream of a motoring visionary, one that promised curvy roads, warm sunlight, and the wind on your face. Powered by the steady drum of Honda's racing heart at a tempo of 9,000 revs per minute. What those engineers created would be forged on mountain roads, tuned by artists and engineers, and tested on racetracks around the world. This was the realization of Soichiro Honda. His goal of a better world of motoring. And it was called S2000.
右の白いヘルメットが本田さん8年前の姿です。20歳の頃に初めて作ったレーシングカーカーチス号を颯爽と運転しています。
1年ぐらいかかったような記憶だけど、まあもう何十年も前だからな。だから今より60年前だもん。あ、50年か、60年だ。60年前に作ったんだ。記憶なんかないよ。俺のメモリにはゴム消してあるから。ダメなんだこれ。
In the year 2000, we had flying cars, holograms, and world peace. But in 1946, we barely had any of that. And in post-war Japan, they had even less. Their devastating loss in World War II had shaken the country to its core. Amidst all that darkness sat a humble Japanese man named Soichiro Honda. As a child, Soichiro had fallen in love with automobiles. And as an adult, his passion for the world of machines became an obsession. He would study airplanes, build motorcycles, and dream of racing cars. A dream he would never fully realize because just as he started competing, he nearly lost his eye racing a Ford and retired. Half his eyesight be damned, Soichiro would build himself an empire throughout the late 40s and 50s. And by 1955, Honda was the largest manufacturer of motorcycles in the world. And while he had conquered the world of two-wheel racing, His childhood obsession with those four-wheeled automobiles pushed him to go even further. His dream became reality in 1955, when Japan's Ministry of Trade and Industry created a new program aimed at making Japan a force to contend with in the growing world of passenger cars. Their goal was to get manufacturers to create affordable, four-seater cars that would give newfound freedoms to the Japanese people, and of course, keep Japan competitive on the world's automotive stage. They called it the People's Car. The idea sounds sort of familiar, but I can't quite put my finger on it. Anyway, Soichiro and his team at Honda set about answering that call. But Soichiro wasn't in a hurry. He wanted to get it right. So many years later, after very careful consideration and hard work, Soichiro himself took the driver's seat of their first four-wheeled creation, the 1962 Honda S360. At the newly created Suzuka Speedway, he rolled past an excited audience in their new, elegant, and diminutive sports car. This was the realization of Soichiro's lifelong dream: to create a car with his name on it.
Two secrets of the high performance and long life of the Honda S600. Unique construction of frame and body, precise tachometer, positive controls. Small turning radius. Breathtaking acceleration. Relaxing high-speed stability. 606cc, 57 horsepower Honda S600.
Empowered by the reception of the S360 prototype, Honda would unveil their new four-wheeled lineup soon after, which included the T360, a cutesy little K-truck powered by the engine in the S360. But the S360 itself was missing. Because while the fans in Japan were loving the idea of it, Soichiro wanted Honda cars to be sold around the world. And he thought there wouldn't be much interest in a sports car with such a teeny tiny little engine in it. And so he told his team to take the S360, make it wider, and fit a larger displacement power plant. And with that, the Honda S500 was born. Honda's first passenger car. And fittingly, their first rear-wheel drive, manual transmission, drop-top sports car. Now, sure, the S500 was a safe, cheap little sports car that was a decent first try. But don't tell that to its engine. Under the hood of the S500 was everything Honda had learned from its motorcycle leadership. And it was imbued with the primordial DNA of Honda sports cars that lives on to this day. The 500cc power plant that whistled away under the tiny little hood was a revolution in design. It was cast in lightweight aluminum when the rest of Japan was still using heavy iron. It had dual overhead cams, 4 motorcycle-sourced carburetors, a 5-speed gearbox, and the Honda signature, a tachometer that went all the way up to 9,500 RPM. In 1962, nothing but a motorcycle or a Formula One engine would rev that high. It was the result of Honda's focus on fun, balanced driving, and of course, racing pedigree. The S500 was also Honda's first great example of how they will build something the way no one else really thought to. It was truly a lot of magic in a really small package. And I can go on and on about the Honda S500, but all you need to know is that this was a young Soichiro's vision manifest. It was Honda's first salvo onto the motoring world, unfiltered by any expectation, its edge not dulled by corporate accountants. The early 60s S500 was clearly the precursor of what was to come. The success of the Honda S500 and its subsequent younger siblings skyrocketed Honda from the world's biggest motorcycle manufacturer to one of the world's best makers of anything that moves. But their journey to the top would not be an easy one.
How to prepare your town for the new Honda sedan. First, drive down to Main Street. Change your 2-lane streets into 3-lane streets, because Hondas don't need much space on the road.
Honda's cutesy little sports cars delighted the world in the 1960s. But to build new factories and to stay afloat as a world-renowned automotive brand, Honda needed more than drop tops and K-trucks. They had to make a car for the people, not just Soichiro. At the time, the old man himself was pretty set in his ways. He had a vision, and damn you if you got in his way. But his vision wasn't aligning with reality. Sure, Honda was still selling motorcycles, but thanks to allegations of shoddy build quality in their cars, by 1970, Honda's automotive branch was mere inches away from shutting down for good. Luckily, in Honda's stable was a team of very brave and equally stubborn engineers, including a young Tadashi Kume and Nobuhiko Kawamoto, men who would later lead Honda, but for now would stand up to its namesake to bring Honda back from the dead and into the future of motoring history. Kume and Kawamoto would butt heads with old man Honda and push him to create Honda's first true financial breakthrough. A machine that created a humble but world-changing legacy that lives on to this very day. The Civic. Much to the chagrin of the racing mindset of Soichiro, it was practical. Its trapezoidal shape laughed in the face of beautiful, racing-inspired design. It was affordable. Brand new, it could be yours for less than $2,000. In the year of men fighting a gorilla, that's less than $15,000. And worst of all, at least to Soichiro, it had plenty of room for groceries. But even then, Soichiro's vision was still in there. Unlike its predecessor, it was built well. It had disc brakes, a water-cooled engine. To drive one was to experience perfect balance. And most importantly to a Honda, joy. Despite Soichiro probably hating it, it was a true Honda car, and it saved the company. The Civic's success was so resounding, Soichiro saw that he might have been wrong about what the world wanted from cars, and trusted that his team was in good hands. So he retired. He would stay on to give guidance, but most of the time, he'd just go hang gliding. Replacing him would be Kiyoshi Kawashima, whose motorcycle obsession and savvy marketing skills pushed Honda to take a bigger piece of the pie in the United States throughout the 80s. After his short time leading Honda, he would pass the reins to the bold visionary Tadashi Kume, the man whose leadership would truly make Honda what it is today. Under Kume, Honda would more than double the amount of cars they make and sell every year. Japan's economy as a whole boomed in the 1980s, and Kume made the smart decision to revolutionize not only Honda, but the supercar world when he appointed Shigeru Uehara the lead on a new midship project, the NSX, a car that proved to the stuffy auto journalists of the late 80s that Honda could butt heads with the world's fastest cars and beat them, but in their own way. Its mid-engine VTEC revolutions helped launch the Acura brand and sold expensive Hondas to a global audience. Meanwhile, Honda's Formula One engines were pushing Ayrton Senna to victories, and it would seem Japan was set to take over the motoring world, with Honda at its forefront. Suddenly, though, at the height of it all, tragedy would strike.
Mr. Honda philosophy to progress in my own way. And remember in that party with Honda members and Honda suppliers for the Formula One program. And that is the last memory I kept from him, because it was a sincere happiness feeling from him that I could feel from his heart, through his eyes and his way to talk and express those feelings.
As the cocaine dust of the 80s settled, the 90s reared its ugly head. And I'll die on this hill. The 80s were so fun. And the 90s, well, let's just say things got a bit too dark. Hair metal was replaced with grunge rock and boy bands. Arnold Schwarzenegger got replaced with Pauly Shore. Cell phones and the internet came and, well, ruined everything. And worst of all, in Japan, sales of cars, especially sports cars, plummeted. In 1990, Tadashi Kume saw the signs and bounced, leaving his friend Nobuhiko Kawamoto as his successor. And then the clouds on Honda's horizon grew darker. Old man Honda himself, who had spent his retirement flying in hang gliders and aircraft, passed away and rests his soul amongst the clouds in 1991. Kawamoto had been the former head of Honda's research and development, and he'd been a massive hit at Honda thanks to his revival of their racing program in the 1980s. But now, as leader, he'd left the pit lanes of Formula One, his butt firmly planted in a plushy chair in a corporate office. And laid out on his desk were Japanese news articles predicting that Honda was about to be bought out by Mitsubishi. Yikes. Mitsubishi was flush with profits from their successful foray into SUVs, and were looking to take over the now struggling Honda. Honda in the early 90s had been plagued with build quality issues, and their lineup was quickly falling behind those of their competitors. It was time to face facts. Perhaps the brand had stretched itself far too wide and too quickly. Kawamoto was faced with the difficult task of saving the brand, and his first decision was probably his most difficult. He would kill his pride and joy, Honda's Formula One racing program. Kawamoto would say it was for environmental reasons, because if you remember, the 90s was all about going green, saving the world, recycling, being nice to our planet. You know, because back then people still believed scientists. The good old days. But I digress. And some of that was likely true. Kawamoto did love the planet, and he wanted to be at the cutting edge of technology and emissions. But we all know why he axed it. Formula One is powered by that evil green ooze that we all love. Money. And Honda was fresh out. So Kawamoto would have his engineers focus on the green trees and fresh air zeitgeist, instructing them to refresh Honda's lineup with reliable, well-built machines that were also fuel efficient and, of course, at a price you could afford. And seeing how Mitsubishi was about to buy them out with Montero money, he had them make an SUV. Boo, right? Well, like it or not, SUVs saved car companies the world over. You can thank the Cayenne for the Carrera GT, the Ford Explorer for the Ford GT, and yeah, you gotta give it up to the CR-V for the Civic Type R. Thank you, little guy. And so Honda's teams went to work, and by 1995, Honda had their new lineup of vehicles ready to premiere at the Tokyo Motor Show. Walking through their booth, it would seem that old man Honda's dream of sporty cars and racing wins was fading away like the characters in a time travel movie. But tucked in among the reasonable, predictable, and profitable Civics and CR-Vs was a more optimistic vision. Something uniquely un-Honda, but also, well, the most Honda thing you could imagine. It was gorgeous. Rear-wheel drive, drop top, and you had to tell it what gear to use. It was called SSM, and how the heck did it get in there? Kawamoto's method of saving Honda's bank account was to make the cars the world wanted. Big, bloated, fuel-efficient gray devices that took you and your ugly kids to school and work. And he did a wonderful job of that. But while he was balancing spreadsheets and looking at manufacturing efficiencies, on the wall above his desk sat a photo of old man Honda. And old man Honda was scary, even from the grave. There he was, just staring at him, those stern, judgmental eyes, reminding him that this isn't what his name meant to the world. Honda isn't a Civic. Honda isn't even a car. Honda is the name of a man. And that man was an enthusiast, a thrill seeker, a race car driver. And so, to keep Soichiro from literally haunting him to death, Kawamoto set aside some money for a special project. He had seen that even as the world lost its love for pricey sports cars, competitors were still making driver-focused machines for those of us with a heartbeat. Nissan's Silvia, Toyota's MR2, and Mazda's Miata. Honda's 95 lineup would have no answer. Nothing that revitalized the soul outside of the wildly expensive NSX, and that wasn't selling so hot. So Kawamoto called upon Shigeru Uehara, who was probably just twiddling his thumbs and bored after designing the masterful NSX, and then being told no one wants sports cars anymore. Kawamoto gave Uehara a small budget and full protection from the marketing departments and accountants, and told him to make something that keeps the ghost of old man Honda happy. Uehara's idea wasn't an original like the NSX. It would be a sequel. A true successor to the first car Honda ever made the same way they made the first one. 30 years later, with all the knowledge they'd learned building cars, racing them, and shocking the world with out-of-the-box thinking. Uehara planned to make a modern sports 500. This time, though, quite a bit faster, and he'd make it the Honda way. The weird way.
The S2000 is Honda's first true open sports car since the S800 ceased production back in 1971. The tiny 800cc engine was incredibly advanced with twin camshafts and a roller-bearing crank which allowed it to rev to 8,000. And the S2000 follows that high-tech tradition.
Now look, I'm gonna be honest with you all. Growing up as a car guy, a drifter, and a racing fan, I didn't really have a lot of love for Honda. And you might feel the same, but you're wrong. I mean, I sure was. In my defense, with their tiny little engines, low horsepower numbers, and front-wheel drive, I really didn't get it. Their cars just didn't seem like sports cars, they were just passenger cars. But that all changed. A few years ago, I was broke and kind of done with sports cars. So I gave in and bought the littlest, silliest car I could, a Honda Fit. And almost overnight, I fell in love with it. Like, love. It was cute, but it drove with ferocity. Its minuscule engine was laughable on paper, but with your butt planted in that little seat, you were never wanting for more power. Owning it, I could tell it was made extremely well. It was comfortable, versatile. And of all the cars I've ever owned, it's probably up at the top of the cars that put a smile on my face every single time I drove it. With that car, I learned what real, clever engineering can do for even the most humble of vehicles. And in owning that cute little Honda Fit, I learned one immutable fact. Honda doesn't give a f***. They do whatever they think is right, and it usually is. They're essentially the Nintendo of the car world, content with making their little products their own way, seemingly ignoring what everyone else is doing. Going against design and engineering norms, almost as if to just challenge themselves. The result are quirky little cars you have to drive to enjoy. Vehicles that work for you, not against you. Machines that once you own them, you fall in love with them. Because a Honda car is magic. It's why they were my first story to tell. The NSX's existence is just absurd. Honda in the 1980s took a look around at the world of fast cars. Expensive exotics with over-the-top styling, sports cars with huge turbos chasing ever higher horsepower numbers. Their team writing copious notes. Hell, they even made a chart. Then, they just threw all that in the trash and made a car their own way. And what they made was perfect. It wasn't powerful like a Ferrari. It wasn't a sculpture of male insecurity like a Lamborghini. It didn't rely on cheap tricks like turbos or wide wheels to perform well. It used ingenuity, engineering, and a little sprinkle of magic. It was a really fast, really well-made Honda, and the world needed it. From the S500 to the Honda Fit, Integra, and Civic Type Rs, hell, even the Ridgeline, Honda doesn't make anything the way you expect them to. And so, when Kawamoto wanted to make a new Halo sports car, one that represents the unique vision Honda has carried for decades, Kawamoto knew Uehara had to be free to make his car his own way. By now, Shigeru Uehara had kind of developed a system for this. Like the NSX before, with its graph of performance targets, this new project began with a chart of the world's top sports cars. But rather than exotics, they focused on the machines of pure driving pleasure. The Caterham 7, the Mazda Miata, the Lotus Elan, proper wind in your hair, smile on your face sports cars. And of course, no project at Honda could be real if it wasn't involved in or inspired by Formula One. For the SSM concept though, Uehara focused specifically on the 60s era of Formula One, that wild, dangerous part of Formula One history that surrounded the engineering team at Honda when they made the original S500. The project was called SSM, or Sports Study Model. The key word there was study. It wasn't really meant to create a car to go on sale in showrooms. Well, at least not anytime soon. They knew that making new sports cars was a disastrous move in the mid-90s. But we can assume Kawamoto and the team at Honda had high hopes that the world of fun cars would return. So they planned ahead, designing a sports car for the future. A future they thought would be brighter and more fun. And thank God they were right. Uehara's vision of a futuristic cutting-edge successor to the S500 was a vehicle that focused on saving weight, out-of-this-world engineering, classic proportions, and of course that Honda secret sauce, making a crankshaft spin really fast. To really make this sports car soup flavorful though, they would need a little Italian spice.
How many ideas do you get from Formula One performance? Do you use a lot of that technology in your design for the street cars?
Technology, I try to use as much as I can in technology. In design, I think it's not only the Formula One, it's all what going around the world, scientific activity. My ideal is to combine science, technique, and aesthetic.
By now, if you've watched enough of my videos, you'll have realized they're all connected. Well, this one's easy. The thread that runs through this story is one of the most important companies in the automotive world. You definitely know the name, Pininfarina. They have designed all of the beautiful Italian supercars you love. But what you may not know is, on a few occasions, they've made a little trip to Japan. The first one was in 1984. It's a great year. Back then, Honda hired Pininfarina to style them up the most out-of-the-box, out-of-this-world sports car concept of the future, and it was called HPX. The HPX was one of the most striking and unique concept cars they'd ever made. It was a classical wedge-shaped supercar that did nothing the way you expected it to. You know, like Honda. It was mid-engined, it didn't have any doors, it was made of advanced materials, and it was, and still is, magnificent. It was so great that about 5 minutes after Honda saw the first drafts of its design, they started making the NSX. And so too, the SSM concept would be a partnership that crossed the globe. Italian design, Japanese engineering. That really needs to happen more often. Pininfarina worked with Honda's lead designer, Daisuke Sawai, to bring together what they saw as the future of sports car bliss. A two-seat roadster with no top, an aircraft carrier-esque long nose, and of course, wild weird design choices, because concept car. Most notably, in the SSM, the driver and passenger were separated by a center beam, giving the driver the experience of being in a Formula One car that fits you like a glove. But also, this design promised enhanced chassis rigidity and better handling, which is usually lacking in roadsters and drop tops. The result was gorgeous, and again, this was 1995. The S2000 wouldn't release for another 4 years. But even when it came out in 1999, its design was ahead of its time. The SSM wasn't alone. Over at the Pininfarina booth, its twin brother, the Argento Vivo, showed a very similar face. But of course, the Vivo being in the Pininfarina booth was more elegant, more Italian. It had the same underpinnings as the SSM, but it was draped in wood, leather, and bigger, bustier Italian lines. These two cars at the same show the same year sent a message. Honda had a vision for the future, and it was a very fun future. Their concept cars stole the show. Press speculation was all over the place. The underwhelming NSX wasn't aging very well, and this driver-focused SSM and elegant Vivo suggested to the general public that the NSX's replacement had arrived. But Kawamoto and Uehara knew it was hard to sell ultra-expensive, ultra-fast cars, no matter how well-balanced and well-engineered they were, if they came with a Honda badge. So this wouldn't be the NSX's replacement, it was its little brother. The reception from the Tokyo Auto Show proved to them two things. One, they were gonna sell a shitload of CRVs. And two, that CRV money meant that they could make the SSM a reality.
In 1995, Honda unveiled their SSM, or Sports Study Model concept, at the Tokyo Motor Show. Honda's ambition was to create a true performance roadster, to offer enjoyable driving in all aspects. High technical targets were set, and an active approach to environmental and safety issues was taken. Making extensive use of racing-derived technology, the Honda S2000 is the realization of that dream.
Now, of course, working with Italian supercar designers and concepting a new sports car from scratch all sounds very expensive, and it was. But Kawamoto was sure Honda's new CRVs and Civics would keep the lights on, the board happy, and the Mitsubishi Sharks at bay. So the S2000 project got its budget. Uehara's job, not just to make a new sports car, but make a Honda sports car. One that evoked the spirit of the Sports 500, that revolutionized the sports car marketplace like the NSX, and competed with the growing field of sports car challengers like the BMW Z3, Mazda Miata, and Porsche Boxster. It would be hard, but Honda always loves a challenge. As the hype around the Tokyo Motor Show faded away, the SSM concept was packed in a crate and shipped to racetracks around the world. On the Nürburgring, in the Swiss Alps, and on the quiet mountain roads of Hokkaido, they drove the SSM and Vivo concept prototypes for upwards of 1 million miles. Uehara's team wasn't just testing the cars, they were torturing them. Every apex, every toasted set of brake pads and shaved set of tires were sacrifices to the Honda team's diligent work to make the new S2000. It was hard work because they weren't just trying to make a good handling drop top, they were trying to do what no one else had before. Make a convertible that didn't flex. If you didn't know, the roof of your car is a key element in its rigidity, so convertibles tend to be a bit on the soft side chassis-wise. Other companies tend to reinforce nearly every part of the car to make up for this flex. Cross braces, hidden roll bars, extra bits welded everywhere, to make their convertibles not turn like a pregnant yak. Honda, of course, had a different idea. The very late 90s named concept, X-Bone. A central structural backbone that ran straight down the middle of the car, linking the front and rear subframes. It was revolutionary and core to what made the SSM concept so novel. And best of all, it worked. The S2000 was as rigid on the road as a slick-top sports coupe, and it didn't suffer some bloated weight penalty either. Their innovations didn't stop there. Honda wanted the car to have perfect balance, like a Formula 1 car. So they pulled the engine back behind the front axle and mounted it as low as they could in the chassis. With that rigidity and that low center of gravity, paired with 50-50 weight distribution and suspension design lifted straight from the NSX, all combined to give the Honda S2000 driving dynamics that punched far above its weight class. But a true Honda sports car is nothing without a heart.
The all-new 16-valve twin-cam 2-litre engine is supposed to have more power per litre than any other normally aspirated production engine. But this only feels like it's got about 140. So where's all the power? Ah, there's the power. Because, of course, this 2-litre has got Honda's infamous VTEC variable valve timing, which makes it almost 2 engines in one.
The S2000, like the NSX before it, was an engineering flex from Honda. They'd spent the last 4 decades pushing Formula One cars and motorcycles to engineering heights no one dared to reach. And they brought it all together under that hood. Uehara didn't just have his team take a Civic engine off the shelf and tune it up. They purpose-built a whole new power plant for the S2000, dubbed F20C. An all-aluminum 2-liter sidewinder missile of an engine. Forged internals, dual overhead cams, and VTEC meant it produced 240 horsepower without a turbo in sight. Now I know that number's not astronomical, but it was 2 liters. It made more power per liter than anything Porsche, Ferrari, or any company could muster for over a damn decade. Press down your right foot and the F20C would unleash that power all the way up to a 9,000 RPM redline. Again, just to show that they even could, Uehara's team didn't even bother asking anyone for help with shifting the gears. They built their own 6-speed in-house, and it was a masterpiece. And it was used to take advantage of the VTEC-shaped power band of the F20C, fitted with close ratio gears to keep the car high on the revs. And its shift throw incredibly short, just 40 millimeters, shorter than any production car at the time, meaning that the car was always revving, always in the power band, and always just a quick flick of the wrist from passing anyone in front of you. That 6-speed didn't just shift gears, it moved and clicked like the bolt on a sniper rifle. In a car with so many marvelous bits of racing-inspired tech, the transmission is often lauded as the best part. To keep track of those fast-changing gears, Honda even gave you a digital gauge cluster inspired by Formula One. And it lit up not with the turn of a key, but with the push of a button, just like a race car. It was all magnificent. So well engineered, so much out-of-the-box thinking, so much noise and joy poured into every decision. It was really, truly a proper Honda. And in 1999, when it was all bolted together and painted in Formula Red, they boxed it up and sent it to the Geneva Auto Show to show the world what they'd been cooking for the last 5 years. And what the world was about to witness was what can be done when you build a car not for profit, but for joy.
The S2000 is everything a good Honda should be, everything a good sports car should be, and everything you think fast cars are supposed to be when you close your eyes and forget for a moment about V8s and torque and all that other stuff.
Despite its diminutive price tag and relatively pedestrian specs, the S2000 was special enough to be assembled by the same people in the same factories that were trusted with the NSX. In April of 1999, those factories pushed bright red, white, and yellow S2000s into showrooms around Japan, and later into a crowded battleground the world over. Because a year prior, inspired by the success of the Mazda Miata, everyone else had released their own drop-top roadster. By the turn of the millennium, young businessmen trying to get attention could buy a BMW Z3. Their middle-aged managers could settle on an Audi TT. Their aging CEO could putt around town in an SLK Roadster, and they could all buy a Porsche Boxster S after the divorce. They were all great cars, all released before the S2000, and they were all from prestigious European brands. Which made it a tough decision in the year 2000, which seems ridiculous now, as every one of those Euro Roadsters have largely faded from memory. They look old and dated parked at a Cars and Coffee, and most of them can barely even run anymore. Uehara's S2000, even today though, is still shining. Still worth nearly as much as it was brand new. And it still looks stunning no matter what it's parked next to. But again, if you were a buyer in 1999, the S2000's reserve styling might have sent you to a Porsche dealer. Its simple interior might have made you yearn for a Benz or a BMW. And the price tag from a Japanese brand might fool you into just buying the cheaper Miata. Hell, even if you test drove one, chugging around your local Honda dealer at 30 miles per hour, shifting gears constantly and not going anywhere fast, you may not have understood its appeal. Because at street legal speeds below 6,000 RPM, you hadn't even hit VTEC. The car was asleep. Driving to the supermarket, you can't feel that NSX-derived suspension design. In stop-and-go traffic, that close ratio 6-speed is downright annoying to manage. And if you had nary a curvy road in sight, you'd probably even regret buying your S2000. But you'd have been wrong. Because to understand the S2000, you had to wring it out like a dirty mop. see screams and howls past 7,000 RPM, your ears and your brain are telling you have to shift up, but you still had so much further to go. The real magic of the S2000 was found nearest its ridiculous redline. Its spirit coming alive as the tires heated up and the hands gripping the wheel got brave enough to drive it right. The S2000, like a lot of what Honda does, wasn't made to impress you in a sales brochure or in a comparison of lap times and 0 to 60 tests. It was made to thrill you on an open road and make you giggle like a child as you beat the piss out of it. Flying through a corner far too fast, flicking that wheel and managing its quick steering ratio, and hearing that beautiful engine howling through the air around you, you would finally understand. This was 40 years of Honda Motorsports at your fingertips, ready to tackle the next challenge again and again. It was brilliant, it was special, and like all good things, it was never meant to last.
Yes! Just more! All the time, more. Give people what they want. You hear me, Honda? Give people what they want. Just, Honda, just make the S2000 again. Make it again. This is what enthusiasts want. You did it. For 10 glorious years, you did it. You gave the world exactly what they wanted.
The Honda S2000 was always going to be short-lived, because like the NSX before it, it was just a special project. A one-off, out-of-the-blue idea, cooked up by skilled and probably bored engineers that wanted to challenge themselves to do something that no one asked them to. It was difficult, it was unnecessary, but it worked. Honda's team made 110,000 examples of Uehara's Roadster, shipped it the world over, and most of them went to American showrooms. Reviews by Automotive Press were largely glowing. In comparisons to the competition from BMW, Porsche, and Audi, the S2000 was always first or second place. Unfortunately, some of those journalists dinged the F20C for its lack of low-end torque, making it kind of annoying to drive in a city. So Honda tried to fix this by updating the car with a longer stroke and a lower redline, giving it better daily driving performance. But all of this catering to annoying journalists came at a cost. The second iteration of the S2000 kinda lost its edge, its raw driving experience, its raucous, high-rev symphony. It was still a great car, but it wasn't Honda magic anymore. In another world, the S2000 would still be living on today, challenging the competitors in showrooms and racetracks the world over. But Kawamoto retired from leading Honda just as the S2000 arrived, and his successor, Hiroyuki Yoshino, had a different plan for the company. Yoshino would push Honda towards the future, not with sports cars, but with robots, rocket ships, and hybrids. Thankfully, Yoshino let the S2000 live out its life for a decent run, probably because he too still had a bit of fear of that portrait hung in his office. The portrait of the man whose hands built this place. The man whose name wasn't just on the building, but the fierce spirit that lives on in every machine he laid hands on. It was for this man that the S2000 was built, long after he was gone. And its creator, Shigeru Uehara, did him the greatest honor by building him exactly what he always dreamed of. A simple, lightweight, open-top roadster that delivered pure motoring joy. As a final send-off of the Honda S2000, 10 years after its release, Uehara gave us the S2000 CR, or Club Racer. It was an S2000 that cut carbs and went to the gym. It was lighter, stiffer, with bigger wheel wells, wider tires, and more grip. The CR was an S2000 homologated to race for no race in particular. With its creation, Uehara made the ultimate edition of the S2000 that he had always wanted. It was the best rear-wheel drive convertible roadster Honda had ever produced, and it may very well be their last. In large part because Uehara retired just after making it. And with him, the last of the old guards at Honda have left the building. There is likely no one at Honda today that has ever stood face to face with old man Soichiro. or cowered in his long and terrifying shadow. So, does this mean the age of Honda's huge upsets is over? Can Honda surprise us again as they have before? Breaking into car development with a four-wheeled motorcycle like the S500? Upending the world's definition of supercars with the NSX? Or creating a timeless motoring icon with the S2000? Sure, they've teased us with sports cars over the years, but are they going to build them the right way? Not over-engineered by stuffy German scientists, designed to fit a market segment, or penned by egotistical designers with focus on form over function. No. To wow us again, they'll need to make their next sports car the S2000 way. The Honda way. Start with a challenge. Do something they've never done before, and make it for that young boy named Soichiro, who as a child saw his first car and knew that he'd spend the rest of his life building one of his own. That boy who started a company to share that passion with others, who took great risks and made huge compromises to share his dream with the world. With just his one good eye, Old Man Honda always had a perfect vision. Make a car light, make it simple, and most importantly, make it fun. The Honda S2000 was a gift made for a ghost. Inspired by Formula One, driven without driver's aids and powerful without turbos, the S2000 hammered out a song few could sing better. It was a rousing symphony in honor of a man who spent his life seeking that perfect rhythm, that delicate drum that moves the soul, the human heartbeat.
That really opens up around 8,000 RPM.
アメリカ・デトロイトにある車の殿堂。フェラーリ、メルセデス、シボレー。世界の自動車王たちの中に日本人でただ一人、本田宗一郎さんが殿堂入りしていました。ミスター・ホンダは高性能エンジンの代名詞と最大級の賛辞が添えられていました。殿堂の入り口にあるサイン帳。世界への夢を実現した本田さん。幸夫人を伴ってここを訪れていました。